You're listening to Refracted World with Terry Geo. Episode 15. Virtual Reality. Fad or Future? Virtual reality is a fad, except it's not. And it's actually been around for hundreds of years. Well, kind of. Huge panoramic paintings from the 19th century were created to surround the viewer and transport them, kind of, into the painting. Not exactly VR, but the idea was the same. And from that point, it just cascades. In 1838, we got the stereoscope from Charles Wheatstone. In 1849, we got the lenticular stereoscope from David Brewster, and William Gruber invented the Viewmaster in 1939. And they were still popular in the 80s when I was a kid. I loved that Viewmaster. These were all precursors to what was to come using the technology of the day. The first ever flight simulator was created by Edward Link all the way back in 1929, which links in with, pardon the pun, with VR's first appearance in science fiction just 1 year later. It must have had an incredible impact. In Pygmalion Spectacles, Stanley G. Weinberg writes about the idea of a pair of goggles that allow the wearer to experience fictional worlds through holographics. Fast forward 90 years and his prediction has come true. There were many attempts at VR over the years, in fact almost every year since Stanley's prediction, but it wasn't until 1987 that the name virtual reality was actually born. Growing up in the 80s, I saw firsthand how fast technology was advancing. Computers, gaming, phones, TV, music, the entire world was being thrust into a new technological age, and VR was within our reach. Or so we thought. I remember seeing Lawnmower Man, an early 1990s film starring Pierce Brosnan. He played a scientist who used virtual reality to treat a mentally disabled patient who gets trapped inside the virtual world. It was frightening but also fascinating. Sega and Nintendo tried their best to release VR headsets and haptic equipment, but these all failed. The technology just wasn't there yet. In 2007, Google released Street View with 360-degree images, which by itself isn't really VR. But in 2010, just 3 years later, Street View got a 3D mode, which made it much more realistic. 2010 was also the year Palmer Luckey created the first Oculus Rift prototype, and this one device was to shape the future of VR forever. In 2012, a Kickstarter campaign for the Oculus Rift raised $2.5 million. And in 2014, Facebook bought Oculus. Google released their mobile VR cardboard, which I actually owned. Sony released the PSVR, which I tried. And Samsung entered the forum with their Gear VR, which I didn't have, but I had kind of a knockoff that someone gave me at Christmas. There were loads of these plastic knockoffs going around for about £30, where you slid your phone in front of it while it was strapped to your face, and it was kind of VR, but not really. Over the next few years, everyone and their dog released something to do with VR or VR headset or mobile attachment or accessory, but the standouts were the Oculus Rift and the HTC Vive. But the one clear winner throughout all of this was Oculus, who in 2018 brought out their standalone wireless headset known as the Oculus Quest. And just 2 years later, the Oculus Quest 2 hit the stores, and this for me is where I joined the story. I had been following VR quite closely for quite a few years. I had tried the PSVR at a friend's house in 2019, but I didn't like it. The calibration wasn't there for me. I had terrible motion sickness from some of the games, and being weighed down by a huge wire at the back and a quite heavy headset was not the experience I was looking for. But when Facebook, now Meta, released the Quest 2, with a huge price reduction, better graphics and performance, with no wires, I knew it was time to step into the virtual world. I went into it knowing that it wouldn't be as crystal clear as PlayStation, hence no wire, but I also wanted to experience that freedom of being able to move without restriction. And the graphics seemed to be good and getting good reviews. And on Christmas Day, 2020, after a terrible year for everyone on the planet, it was so nice to finally put on that headset and escape into a world of imagination. The free demo for Beat Saber was my very first experience. Having those blocks travel towards you at speed as you slice them in half with a laser sword in time to music blasting into your ears without the use of headphones was exhilarating and also confusing. The tutorial for Beat Saber is not extensive, and it's kind of a game that you have to play more to learn how to get good at it. So I went back and downloaded something called First Steps, which taught you how to use the Oculus much better than the 5 seconds on Beat Saber. And once you get the hang of it, you get the hang of doing everything in VR. It's quite simple once you know what you're doing. Being a huge Star Wars fan, the second game I played was Vader Immortal. I was face to face with stormtroopers, I was flying through space, I was seeing planets, and I got to fight with a lightsaber against Darth Vader. As a PC gamer, I half expected to be disappointed with the graphics, but you barely register the graphics in VR. It's the immersion that matters the most. In fact, there was a study recently done by Bath University, and they said that it's actually the emotional attachment we have in VR that matters much more than the graphical capabilities. That, of course, won't stop the advancement in graphics in VR, and I'm all for that, just as long as the core experiences don't diminish because of it. Now in 2024, we have quite a bit of choice when it comes to VR headsets, most notably from PlayStation, who have now released the PSVR 2, Valve have the Index, HTC have the Vive Pro 2 and Elite, but the two clear winners are Apple's Vision Pro and the MetaQuest 3. The AVR is a high-end luxury headset which is aimed more at the Apple/business user, but currently they have very little software other than those already found in current Apple hardware. This is bound to change in the coming years if Apple continues its foray into VR, and I really hope it does. More competition means more innovation and more choice, and just a better user experience for all of us. But price will always be a factor for most people, and the MetaQuest 3 is a seventh or a fifth of the cost of the AVR, depending on which headset you buy, and has an extensive catalogue of games and experiences. The graphics aren't as crisp and clear as Apple's headset, but for my money, Meta is, at least currently, the much better option. And although VR is dominating the headlines recently, I believe the more important tech we should be focusing on is AR. Augmented reality has already been integrated into our VR headsets and a number of glasses and sunglasses. Look at Ray-Bans. They now have AR technology made by Meta. They're currently on the market with taking pictures and listening to music capabilities, but there are other offerings on the way from the likes of Google, Microsoft and Lenovo, where you'll be able to read emails and respond to texts, maybe even watch TV shows as you walk down the street. And as we apply more AI integration into our technology, these AR devices will soon be able to change the world around us, or at least how we observe the world. Walking down a boring or cluttered street, you may be able to change it. That dustbin is now a bush, those houses are now castles, and that pothole in the middle of the road is now a mirrored pond with butterflies flying overhead. Of course, as soon as you take off your glasses, the real world returns. But as of recording this video, American tech company Neuralink has implanted a chip into a human brain for the very first time. Still in its very early stages, this chip can already allow the user to control their phone and computer using electrical and chemical signals just by thinking. If these trials continue and are a success, what does that mean for our future selves? Instead of controlling a computer with our brains, why not just have that computer implanted into us? There would be no need for devices or glasses or headsets. Everything would already be there, right inside our brain. We would, in essence, become cyborgs. And that, for many of us, is a terrifying prospect, and maybe one going a little too far. But the counter-argument to that is, Aren't we already cyborgs? How many of us can live without technology? How do you feel when you forget to take your phone out with you? If you can't access the internet? If you can no longer track your steps with your watch? The human race is already completely dependent on technology, and surely the next iteration would be integration. Of course, there is a huge leap from holding a phone and to a surgeon opening up your brain. But with time and advances in technology and making these procedures as simple as having your ears pierced, I believe it will happen. And it will happen sooner than we think. But for now, we are still in the external tech phase. We pick up our phones, we read messages, we watch videos, we doom scroll through social media, we insert earbuds to listen to music or to our favourite podcasts. Hello. And we cover our eyes with AR glasses or VR headsets. These may be at times clunky and silly looking, but at least you can take them off when you're done and don't have any scars just to be able to slash some blocks with a laser sword. Every year, or every 6 months, tech advances forward. And in every year, we get closer and closer to living in an AR world. With Apple's Vision Pro, you can already walk around in public while looking through the lens. You may get funny looks from passers-by, but who cares when you can follow a map without looking at your phone? Sleeker and less cumbersome are the Ray-Ban AR glasses. Teaming up with Meta, these glasses may not have all the features from a VR headset, but you can take pictures and videos and listen to music without headphones and take calls without headphones. To the average person, these look identical to any other pair of Ray-Bans, and it won't be long until more features and abilities are squeezed into these tiny packages. And we've already seen a huge change in the size and shape of these VR devices, from huge boxes with attached cables to slimmed down goggles with wireless technology. I personally had the Quest 2 and the Quest 3, and the Quest 3 is I think it's half or a third less. It's so much lighter and much more comfortable, and that's just in a few years. And yet, they are more powerful than they've ever been. Now we can work, walk, and play in virtual and augmented reality. And with the advent of AI, we will likely see the implementation in many more ways. Why not turn the humble car windscreen into a smart screen, with directions marked out on the road ahead like Mario Kart? Have your glasses scan your fridge and suggest recipes, or create a more pleasing environment to live in. All of these are technically possible right now, and as more is integrated into our lives, the more normal they will become. There is, of course, a huge worry that when everything is done for us and the world around us is rose-tinted, we will become too reliant on technology and live full-time in a fictional representation of the world around us. But this world only exists when we are using the devices. Take them off, and we are once again back in reality. That, of course, is until we have those chips implanted into our brains, but we're not there yet. For now, our future is the integration of virtual and augmented realities. These should help us in everyday tasks, work, and recreation. We are already highly dependent on technology, and I'm sure any pushback will dissolve the more we use them. The same was said about the telephone, TV, rock music, computers, mobile phones, even the internet. Basically, every single advancement we have had has had pushback until they've been used. For me, I was sold in the first hour of being in a virtual world. VR, amazing. I was totally taken in by the feeling of being transported anywhere while still standing in my living room. I could imagine the future uses of VR and knew this was only going to improve in time. And it already has. In just 3 years, we've already made huge progress. I'm excited to see what will happen in the next decade. Already with the Quest 3, I now have pass-through ability, which is where you can be looking at something in the virtual world while still looking at your surroundings. This is even amplified further with the Apple Vision Pro, where it looks like real life around you, even though it's through cameras. It's so crystal clear. You can be reading emails whilst walking down a real street passing real people. And this is why I think AR is going to be massive in the next 5 to 10 years. And I think we will all be using it in some way. If you haven't tried VR yet, go for it. You really can't understand what it's like until you're in it. Videos don't do it justice, as you're trying to view a 3D environment on a 2D screen. For decades, we've all sat in front of a TV to unwind. Now we can be more immersed with the screen all around us. But it's more than that. It's the feeling and emotional response we all get when you're in VR. And it's not just games. You can travel the world with 360-degree images and videos from all over Earth. There are documentaries, meditation, exercise routines, unique experiences like flying through the air or flying through space, visiting different planets, visiting different people. And with mixed reality or augmented reality, in some devices, your home office could be on another planet altogether. VR has been a dream for hundreds of years, and now we are just on the cusp of what this technology can really do. But what about you? Have you tried VR? Have you tried AR? Have you stayed away from the technology because you don't want to see what it's like? Are you worried about our virtual future? Or would you prefer things stay the same? Let me know. And as always, thank you for listening. I hope you enjoyed today's episode, and I hope you join me again soon. Until then, take care.